Scar tissue left behind by an injury or surgery can reduce normal joint function and limit range of motion. 15% of patients struggle with chronic pain and long-term functional disability because of scar tissue. For these patients, the ability to work is limited. Treatment is more costly. Repeat surgery is risky. But there is a better, clinically proven solution. Ermi is the standard of care for non-operative treatment of patients with severe motion loss. Our service rescues patients who have not responded to standard motion recovery therapy. We have supported the treatment and recovery of more than 100,000 patients with a 90% success rate and 0 complications. With Ermi, patients are free to move again, free to live again. Ermi is not a brace, and it's not just a product. We're a team of doctors, engineers, and professionals dedicated to the science of range of motion. Our specialized equipment is part of a step therapy program that works in partnership with the patient's clinical team. For more information, please visit our website.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the podcast with Dr. Rick. I'm Mike Claiborne. And Rick, why don't you introduce our guest? Because I'm anxious to talk to her about a lot of things that are certainly going on in the world of sports today. So why don't you go from here?
Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Rick Lehman. Thank you. And tonight we are very, very blessed to have Dr. Caroline Rodriguez, who is a team psychologist for the United States Olympic team and has just recently come back from Tokyo. Caroline, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lehman and Mike, for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, we have a lot of things to talk to you about. First of all, why don't we get into your Olympic experience and why you were there?
So I am really lucky. My job, quote unquote, is actually a passion of mine. I get to support athletes make their dreams a reality for themselves. Which is I can kind of get into later about why I got into my field, which has to do a lot with Dr. Lehman himself. But I have a very unique position where I travel to Olympic Games, World Cups, national team camps with all different teams to support them on the road, both with performance and their mental health and whatever else they kind of need. So I work with mainly archery, BMX freestyle, BMX race, a little bit of sailing, and triathlon.
Those are some very diverse sports that you're involved in. And I'm anxious, how did you end up choosing those sports? Because while most people think of archery, once you get past William Tell, there's not many people that they can talk about. And when you watch them in action, it's a lot different than the normal bow and arrow that we've seen, on TV. So from that, the triathlons and the other events of sailing, how'd you select those sports?
So actually, it's really interesting. I knew nothing about the sports I work with, besides maybe triathlon a little bit, but BMX freestyle, which is very similar to like the kind of X Games kind of stuff. Sailing, I'm from the Midwest, Iowa, Missouri, had never really been sailing. Archery, never shot a bow in my life. But I actually really like working with teams that I don't have a lot of like personal athletic experience with, because I like to have a co-collaborate relationship with the athletes and for us to be kind of equals in the room. So it kind of helps with that power imbalance, because they have some expertise and I bring some expertise to in the room, and then together, hopefully we can build a pretty strong team together. And, my position, I'm not there to coach, my position is really there to help with, their well-being, their mental performance skills, which is, very applicable no matter what sport it is. So yeah, I was a swimmer. So, BMX freestyle or archery or sailing, not too much in common with my background.
So you didn't even ride a bike as a kid, is what you're saying?
Stationary bike for dry land. We call everything dry land, but not really, no.
Okay.
So, and what I really like about my teams too is just the wide array of like cultures and type of athletes I get to work with. Obviously, the sailing traditional world's very different than a BMX world, which is very different than a triathlon world. So you have a lot of different types of personalities, different types of backgrounds, which is really fun for me. And it's something I really enjoy.
And Caroline, what are some of the issues that the Olympic athletes are dealing with? I mean, you've been to Worlds, you've been to a number of events that we've actually both been to, but what tell us, what do you do? What are the Olympic athletes dealing with? Tell us some of the pressures of the Olympics, and tell us some of the pressures of being at that level as an athlete.
So I'll be really honest with you, my colleagues. So there's 7 USOPC sports psychologists. We have one winter, one for para, and then the other for summer sports, as I am. And they had kind of preps for me, like, Caroline, this is going to be really tough, you know. And I went into it believing them. And when I got there, it was probably 10 times as difficult as what they had prepared me for. Because, you know, if you go to Worlds or if you go to Pan Am Games or Pan Pacs, whatever it might be, it's nothing like the Olympics. You know, as for the athletes, especially with certain sports like sailing or swimming or triathlon, you know, the Olympics is it, you know. For like women's softball, like that's it, you know. There is not a World Series or a Super Bowl, and it only happens every 4 years. And this time, you know, there were so many different unknowns and so many different variables. Like, are the Olympics going to happen? What were they going to look like? Many of the athletes qualified maybe a year and a half ago. Some of the athletes qualified just a few weeks before the Olympics. You know, some of the athletes who would have competed maybe a year ago were not the people who made the team this year. Not having fans, not being able to go for opening and closing ceremonies. Our athletes had to leave within 48 hours of their last competition. So even if you couldn't even finish watch, say if there was like 3 more days of archery and you got out early, you had to go home even if your teammates were still competing. Because of the COVID protocols and passes in the Olympics. You know, in the dining hall, we were in and out. There was plastic all around us. And which I think was, you know, for the athletes who had not gone to the Olympics before, I think it was probably easier for them. But I think the athletes who had previous experiences at the Olympics, they had a little bit of a grieving to do of what the Olympics experience meant to them and what they had pictured in their mind, like the opening ceremony, closing ceremony, because the Olympics is so much more than even sport. It's about, you know, the connection, about, you know, meeting all your fellow sportsmen from all the different sports, from all the different countries. You go watch all the different events. So if you're like somewhere, you might want to go watch gymnastics might want to go watch track. People collect pins around their pass. You have like the lanyard. People go crazy. All the athletes go crazy for, you know, exchanging pins from different countries. And all of that was kind of very scaled down. So, you know, the athletes who had those really cool experiences in the past, we talked a lot about that prior to the games. You know, with the games being delayed a year, you know, the fact that the games happened meant a lot to the athletes. You know, I know there's a big push sometimes in the media that's like, oh, we should cancel this. But, you know, for these individuals, it's what they wake up dreaming about, what they go to sleep thinking about. You know, and this is not a few months they dedicate their lives to. You know, they have made sacrifices and choices for years. And, you know, in 3 years, they might not have a successful quad as they did these last 4 years. So it's, you know, you think of the 1980s team and it's almost can be a traumatic experience, you know, if the games were canceled or even that they were being delayed. So we worked a lot with, you know, expect the unexpected. We're going to hope for the best, but like being comfortable with the uncertainty, learning how to embrace it, roll with it, being malleable with it, going into it. And I think the other aspect, which, was really big at this games is just the world's changing, right? So the world's changing, athletes, how they want to use their platform, and for them feeling empowered to do that was really exciting in this Olympics, I think. We had athletes speak out about their mental health, for athletes who spoke out about injustices that are happening in the world today. And it's nice for them to have that platform to be heard. So I think that's something that probably more athletes are aware of today than maybe previous Olympics, or not aware, but maybe hopefully feeling more heard.
It sounds to me that maybe the sports psychologists might have needed a psychologist themselves, but when this is all said and done, with all the changes that you had to deal with. So my question to you, as you mentioned, people had a chance to talk about mental illness and some things that really precluded them from continuing. What was the most common concern that you dealt with in athletes that you talked to? Because we all know that physically they're the best in the world, but obviously there's a mental block and it's sometimes a challenge that comes into play. So was there one common thing you started to hear a lot from different people?
I don't want to be a disappointment to either a coach or a parent or my community. Instead of, one of the things, I really encourage the athletes to try to refrain from themselves is just being there. That's a huge accomplishment, and if somebody wants to criticize or analyze, or, they should go to the Olympics themselves then, see if they can do it better than them. But I think, because it's such a large scale and it only comes around every 4 years, and this time 5 years, I don't want to be a disappointment, and I think that's, if there's parents out there, that's something that parents can really think about is, really praising the process and that, their effort and their energy going into it. And, remembering that, these are people, I think there's a lot of sometimes when the media is interviewing afterwards and, you don't do well, guess what? It doesn't feel good. And sometimes, just the constant media going over and over again can be pretty draining also sometimes the athletes.
And position-wise, did you talk to the athletes every day? Did you guys have meetings? Tell us about your day. What was your day like?
Okay, so I think I slept like 3 or 4 hours a day at the Olympics. So I would, for example, I was really lucky. So there's buses. How it works is in the Olympic Village, there's buses that take you to like the swimming pool or the archery center or gymnastics or wherever. But when you're going to like 4 sports a day, trying to go back and forth to the village, there wasn't even enough time for me to do that. So I was really lucky that I had a car that would take me, to the village, to whichever venue I would go to. But for example, one day I started off with triathlon. I went to the triathlon events. I headed over to the BMX Urban Park where there's skateboarding, BMX, freestyle, BMX, race. I headed there, spent a few hours with those athletes, watching the competition, meeting with athletes, talking to them between rounds. And then I headed to archery. And then we did some final rounds in archery. And all these are different places. And it's like 98 degrees with a lot of humidity, And so
well, you're from St. Louis, so that shouldn't have affected you one bit being from St. Louis.
St. Louis is like it was like San Diego weather. St. Louis is like San Diego weather compared to what we were there. And we're wearing these masks, which are just like, soaked with sweat at that point. So I'm running so then I would run to the archery, and I would do the final rounds with archery. And then I would go back to the village at that point, and then I would eat dinner, usually with the team, talk. I do a lot of like talking and meeting with the athletes while they're eating because they get 2 birds in one. And so we would meet there, and then afterwards I would do some individual meetings, usually around probably from like maybe 9 to 12 at night. And then I would get back to the hotel, and some nights I would be get to go to sleep. But the other nights I would get like maybe an athlete from maybe a different team that I haven't worked with, but they have my contact information and they were struggling that night, and they would give me a call. And so I would do maybe some like Skype calls like find a quiet place and just, do a Skype call right there. So it was pretty busy. But what was really cool, which I don't think a lot of people know about, is we actually built for the athletes a whole, almost like Team USA, high performance center where they had training for all the athletes. We had 3 USA dining halls. So not only in the Olympic Village, but we actually took our athletes out of the village just for their like mental health and for having to have space and just food and just keeping their routine. So that was about 45 minutes away. So some days I would spend more time there. And then other days I would take a bus down to Sailing, which was like 2.5 hours away from the main village. So you have the main Olympic Village, and then you have a cycling village satellite, and you had a sailing/surfing village down south. And some days I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I took the bus to get to Sailing, and then I was at Sailing at 6:30 in the morning, which I'm not a morning person. So that was not, but it's worth it. It's worth it because, like I said, my job, quote unquote, I love it. I never feel like I'm going to work. I wish I get a little bit more sleep sometimes, but I love helping and supporting and encouraging athletes to make their, dreams and intentions reality for themselves.
Well, in this case, and you competed as a swimmer, are athletes more open now to approach you? Because, before sports psychologists came around, basically people either were talking to a family member or a friend or themselves in order to try and remedy their concerns. So how often and how much regularity do you see athletes reaching out where they feel like this is a good thing compared to if I share this information, then maybe they think I'm not all there?
So, I think that's a really great, topic you're bringing up here. Hopefully stigma with mental health and, just getting your performance skills is, it's continuing to get less and less, which we're really excited about. As you see more and more, high profile athletes speak about, how it can be really beneficial to them. I think for the younger ones, they're seeing, if the younger ones on the team seeing, the stars of the team working with us, they buy into it, right? I also think, I think being in the sports world is this type of culture. And I think, my athletic background hopefully enables me to kind of help me understand some of the stresses they're going through. Maybe it gives me a little bit of street credit with them too. But I think, it really helps when you have coaches and parents telling athletes it's really courageous to be able to speak up for yourself and say, hey, I want the support. And, that's been a mission of the USOPC, United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, to really support athletes as whole people. And I think the athletes, they do better when they're taken care of as whole individuals. We're dynamic people. We're affected by what's happening in the world. We're affected by what's happening in our families. People have financial stresses, school stresses. All of those are factors that you don't need to do alone. We want our athletes to feel like they have a tribe behind them. And that's something I really strive. Hopefully we can keep improving upon.
I want to pose this question to both you and Dr. Lehman, because you all work with young people. You mentioned parents, and Rick, you deal with parents on a regular basis. Is it better to try and maybe save some careers early compared to those kids who maybe hit the wall or they burn out, or whatever term you want to use, where it's not fun anymore? Should we start to be able to make people like yourself, Caroline, available at a younger age where they can have these discussions along with trying to deal with the other things of just growing up?
Do you want to go, Dr. Lehman, or should I go?
Caroline, why don't you take it, and then I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Okay. So I personally, my focus of what my job is I work with medal potential athletes, but I have purposely made time to talk to the national like junior teams and the parents. I actually am doing one with archery right now and one with BMX parents and young athletes to start building those skills in now. Because one of the things that, I think is sport is too hard to become a job. Like if we're doing it's there's other ways you can make money. It's too hard. It's too hard on your body. You have to be doing it because it's fun and you love it. And so what I actually encourage a lot of my top athletes to do when they're feeling like, Caroline, this is a job, I send them to go watch the 8 and 10-year-olds practice. Because I'm like, go remember what it was like to be a child. Find your inner child. When you're swimming and you didn't know a place and the times you touched the wall and you thought you won. You got the participation, you got that I touched the wall and you think you won the gold medal, or T-ball, like you're swinging around and you're not hitting the ball off, but there's so much joy in sports. And so that's something I really, really, that's probably one of my biggest thing that I think I have tried to really contribute in the last couple of years is athletes finding their inner child. This should be fun, especially something like the Olympics where you can lose perspective. Like, I have to win this gold medal. You don't have to win a gold medal. I don't want to lose my gold medal. No, that's performing out of fear. You can't lose something you don't have, but you can be open to the possibility. So you're going to have 90% of athletes at the Olympics, right? Or in any state championships or, NCAA finals. I can't lose. I don't want to lose it, right? But if you're so concentrated on not losing it, you're not opening your hand of possibility. So when you open your hand, you're becoming vulnerable. And yes, you could lose some more, but you also open your hand to the possibility. So instead of competing out of fear, I don't want to lose this gold medal. I don't want to mess up my Olympics. We come from a lens of let's go have fun. It might not happen, but I'm open to the possibilities. Let's see what I can do.
So, I think your question's a good one, Mike, and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit. In my role as an orthopedic surgeon, as a mentor, I truly believe that and coaches will tell you this, the parents, and I was the worst parent in the world, is the root of all evil. And I think if you take the parents out of the situation, then the athlete can do just what Caroline said and they can have a good time. So parents listening to this, Caroline's right. You just want to be supportive. You want to tell them you love them. You want to tell them to participate for the love of participating. You want to take the pressure. They have plenty of pressure that they're putting on themselves. And I think bringing in help, whether it's a pastor or it's a sports psychologist or it's an orthopedic surgeon or someone they can talk to at an early age where they can voice their pleasure or displeasure about what they're doing. So they might say, I hate this and I never want to do it again. Or they might say, I really like it. But normally what happens is they get such accolades early on, right? So they're 8, they're 10, they're winning, they're getting all kinds of accolades from their parents. Then all of a sudden, everybody's 13, everyone's pretty good, or everyone's 14. And now the pressure starts to mount. And I think at that transition, they do need someone who is impartial, who they don't feel the pressure, someone who can answer some questions. And I think that would be very helpful. But the parents listening out there, you just need to be a cheerleader. You need to stay on the sidelines. You're not a coach. You don't have to talk about it at dinner. You don't have to talk about how they did at practice today, everything. And I think you want to make their life fun so they don't have the pressure that they're putting on themselves independently.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback off of that, I think you nailed it. Parents need to be parents. They have coaches. What they need is love and acceptance. And I'll be honest with you. I had athletes at the Olympics in tears because their parents, quote unquote, told them that they were disappointments. They were embarrassed. They shouldn't have, embarrass their community. They wasted all their money for, and, for those athletes, for when a parent personalizes their performance, it's really hurtful because, what an athlete does is what they do. It's not who they are. But even at the Olympic level, words do matter, and I know all parents want their child to give their best and, be everything they can be. But, when you start use words like embarrassment, you look like a quote unquote fool, like, it hurts, and it makes sports, it starts building mental issues that, that they maybe didn't have before. And it's the opposite of what's helpful, but also what's kind and compassionate as your child, as a human.
So I want to ask the $1 million question that probably no one wants to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And you may not have a good answer, but everybody wants to know what happened in gymnastics. Kind of what is there a real story? Is there an undercurrent? We know what we read in the media. As you know or may not know, Simone's boyfriend or significant other went to CBC, was a football player, and spends quite a bit of time in St. Louis. So if you have no information, that's fine. And if you got something you can't discuss, and don't discuss it. But other than that, can you give us your thoughts on the whole gymnastics situation?
So what he's saying is we want some gossip.
Okay, well, I can't confirm or deny, if, anything about that situation, but I do think it's really important for us to let athletes share their story if and when they're ready to. So yeah, I'm not able to really speak about that, but I'm not confirming or denying that anything, and I'm not, if there is, and if she wants to, maybe she'll share if there is something to share. So I know it's probably not the answer you wanted, but it's the answer that.
But it's interesting because after she finished competing, we learned that she lost a relative, I guess, right before the Olympics started. And I think that kind of opened up the door for people to kind of wonder, well, maybe there was more to it than just having the gymnastic yips, more or less. And you're right. Maybe she will come out and talk about it more. Maybe she won't. But with her situation and Naomi Osaka, and we're seeing more athletes that are coming out and saying, hey, this is hard. It's not the physical challenge, it's the mental element. How much good do you think that's going to do for the next group of athletes where now it's on the table and we can talk about it?
I think it's huge. I think it's, it took a lot of courage for someone to say, I'm going to take care of I know I deserve as a person to take care of myself, and I think there's a lot of former athletes who have gone and said, like, man, that's like awesome. We're so proud of you for taking care of yourself first, or we're so glad you're being heard and coaches are hearing you and being supportive of the decisions. I think no matter what the case is oftentimes, we don't know everyone's story. We don't know what's happening in everyone's lives. And, just as, we call them, non-athletes, or we usually call them muggles, like in the Harry Potter, we call them muggles, non-athletes. People have deaths in their families. They have, school issues or financial issues, whatever it might be, to remember that all these athletes are people, and yes, they're on a very public stage, but they still have to balance all those different aspects of their lives too.
Right. And I think people don't understand that. And I think as an orthopedist, when you're talking to the family and you're talking to the athlete, you kind of get a lot of that, the pressures, their other issues in their lives I remember a story. This was early in my career, and Bobby Kersey and I were at the World Championships, and one of the athletes in the 4x100 took the baton when she got it and threw it on the ground. Bobby went running track, and she made, I can't say what she said, but basically her comment was, my boyfriend left me last night, and Bobby, I don't give a whatever about this stupid baton or this 4x100, and you can stick it. And that I kind of walked away and I said, you know what? there's more important things than this 4x100, and I think we have to respect that. And when you deal with athletes, you don't know if they're injured, you don't know if they're having pain, you don't know if someone died in their family, their boyfriend left them, they got a bad grade, and as you said, Caroline, they are people. They have the same stress as the rest of us have, and it's easy for us to say, hey, they should have performed better, or they should ignore that. But let me tell you, it's not so easy.
And I think that's one of the things is Olympians, they wake up, they have to go to the bathroom, they put one leg in one pants, put the other pants in the other legs, they're humans, and I think sometimes, we see them on TV, or we see a baseball player on TV, and, we think of them as almost, not human. They're human, they feel and experience all the same things we do.
And I think that makes your role extra special, because that mental component, which really never came out, you'd hear a little bit about it in baseball, or someone would leave a team for personal reasons, but we never really had it front and center, on an international stage. And I think it really does underscore how important the psychological mental aspect is, not only for their personal well-being and their performance, but just like you said, other than that, why would you do the sport? I mean, if it's just so miserable, it's just not worth it.
I think too is like, even compare to like when I was competing, the social media aspect of it, the comments, and it's so much different than even a forum where you had to go look for it, or a web page. Now it's everyone's posting and analyzing, and I'll be honest with you, some of the things I've seen my athletes get written to, death threats, just horrible, inappropriate things, and I think it's so much in their face compared to what it used to be, and I think that's a social media is a big point of stress. I think I think social media, when used correctly, it's a great thing, but at the same time too, I had a lot of my athletes, I can like deplug. You can tell them, I can be bad cop, tell them you're a sports psychologist.
Not going to happen.
And some of them got off of social media. I'm like, just wait till after the games, because it was just somebody criticizing or saying like, this person should have been picked for the team. Like, how could they pick this person and that? And you're reading all these comments, and like, people don't know the full story of things happening. And when you don't know somebody, you're able to talk differently about somebody, because it's just Instagram, right, quote unquote. And so it's horrible. That's the thing.
Question for both of you all. We talk about pressure, and you all both deal with athletes. What do you think is the bigger challenge? The expectations of an athlete and what everybody expects from them, or when that athlete gets hurt and they start to doubt themselves through the recovery process, and maybe it doesn't go as quickly as they thought it would, and the healing issue has now become more mental than the physical injury that they had? Which one do you think is tougher?
There's no question in my mind. Now, I'm jaded. So one of the hardest things for me, and I just remember seeing so many professional athletes that would come back, you fix their knee, or you did whatever you did. And then the next component of that was having somebody make that same, twist, or make that same pivot or backpedal, or do whatever happened that blew out their ACL. And I remember standing on football fields and saying, plant your foot and twist, plant your foot, and they just wouldn't do it. And I think there's a mental aspect as well as a physical aspect. So that's one component, meaning, I did this before, it was a really bad idea. I tore my ACL when I did this, and my mind won't let me do this again. You got to get past that. And the doctor has to get past that. You got to get the athlete past that. So that's one component. The other component is, I think there's a real element once you've been hurt of, am I really okay? Kind of to your point, Mike. And there's a real, so I don't know that I think expectations are part of the deal. And the athletes have expectations, the coaches have expectations, parents have expectations. And I think that's tough to deal with. But when you start doubting yourself, your health, saying, can I really do this? Is my knee, my shoulder, my elbow really going to hold out? And you see it in pitchers a lot after TJs, Tommy Johns, because they come back And once they hit that confidence level, they're unstoppable. But there's a real component. It's usually about 5.5 to 6.5, 7 months where they're really questioning, hey, am I going to get my curveball back? Is my velocity to come back? And that's a very tough time frame. And they always wonder, hey, am I going to be like I was? So I think that is very tough. Miss Caroline?
So I think, and I'm thinking more with like BMX freestyle or BMX race, the type of injuries that they can get are actually, unfortunately they can leave the course, airbagged, on a stretcher. So I think sometimes when the athletes, have those type of injuries, it's really a different type of trauma compared to, maybe there's all injuries are horrible. Okay. No injury is fun. But I think, one of the biggest things that I've had an opportunity to work with athletes is like, what does it mean when you get the type of hurt where it messes up with your cognitive function or your ability to walk or different things like that? And how do you balance that with something you love to do? And I think that's been really challenging for me as a professional, but also for the athletes too, because, until they have that first, traumatic injury on the course, they're always will say, well, it's not me, until it was them. And so, I really, work with those athletes to build the confidence to empower themselves to make informed decisions. But I agree with Dr. Lehman that, expectations, like, if they're self-inflicted expectations or if they are coming from external factors, expectations, I think most athletes know how to deal with that. I think the injuries that either are not healing, kind of what Dr. Lehman mentioned, like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, but it's not getting better. What do I do? Or if they don't have Dr. Lehman, and no one's giving them a clear answer, that can be really frustrating to an athlete sometimes. Sometimes they're being told like all different things about what's happening with their body and they're not sure, like the unknown and, which direction do I go? But then also like, I love doing my sport, but at the same time too, like, what does this mean for me as a person? Like with those in the sports that, where somebody could get, life-changing type of hurt.
So what's next for Caroline? I mean, the Olympics are over. What happens next? What do the archers do? What do the BMX guys do?
We're getting ready for Paris. Countdown's on. Olympic trials are about 2 years out. So we're already in the next squad. Like we're already setting things up for Paris. We have been working on Olympic trials. I'm doing, some workshops with the younger teams right now. But archery has like, the outdoor nationals this week, world championships for BMX race in the Netherlands. So, I mean, like we're already rolling. So that's the, for the individuals who maybe this game didn't go as planned, or if you're out there listening, it's what you do 365 days a year. And so the time's now. We're already getting excited for Paris. We've already started working with some of the French Olympic Committee. Paris is going to be amazing. They're going to do equestrian by the Eiffel Tower, Versailles. They're doing some things under the Eiffel Tower. They're doing, I think, archery in front of the Louvre. I mean, the backgrounds for Paris is going to be unbelievable. Hopefully COVID will be done. You'll be able to see athletes. We'll have fans.
Shopping.
Shopping. I know. So mind-blowing is the Olympic store. There's an Olympic store in the Village talking about shopping. And, they have pins for the athletes and shirts. That store is like packed, sold out from like 4 a.m. in the morning till 10 p.m. at night. Like the athletes it never stops. I left one of my shopping bags from that store on an 11:30 bus one night, and I lost it. I tried to go back, but the line was like 2 hours. So yeah, the athletes love to shop.
So, Caroline, my final question for you. This was an incredible learning experience for you because nobody signed up for COVID and how we had to deal with it. What will you come away with from this experience that'll help you and certainly your athletes? And will you try and take on another sport or two between now and the time Paris rolls around?
Oh, so some great questions. So I believe the first one was, what will I take away?
Yes.
So I think taking my biggest lesson I've learned from this games is, I really want to help the athletes, if they get fourth, fifth, and sixth, reframe that going into it. What does it mean to win? Having them understand like what the Olympics are about a little bit more, so they can keep that perspective that they already won, that they have that platform to help them with that perspective and dealing with those expectations and pressures going into it. I think, one of the great things that, I saw this Olympics and some athletes experience and other athletes saw that it doesn't have to be now. Maybe this is not the Olympics that everything worked out as you wanted, but maybe it'll be your third Olympics, or maybe you just missed the team and it's going to be the next Olympics. But the Olympics is not, I like to use metaphors, but I said going to the Olympics is like having a great wedding, okay? Your marriage is your career, like your whole career, that's what defines you as an athlete, not this one games. So you gotta take the pressure off yourself, this is what's gonna make me a great athlete. No, you're already a great athlete. Kind of going into that and really kind of get that ingrained in their mind earlier, and really kind of start speaking about the Olympics like that. And then what was the next question?
Will you take on another sport? I mean, other than the ones you have? I mean, I'm sure like jacks or tetherball is going to be on the next Olympics, the way they keep adding sports. So
we're adding
take on another one.
So really quick, so how the IOC adds sports, I don't know if you guys know this, but so the IOC decides which sports are going to be brought in and what sports are no longer going to be in Olympics by how many countries it can include in the world. So for example, polo used to be in the Olympics, but they took polo out because you had South Africa, England, Argentina, just a few countries playing polo. So they really look for sports that have as many countries as possible that they can have athletes from, which is another interesting topic, is about the reason why with that. I will not be able to take any more in my portfolio, but the teams I am directed towards is decided by my boss, my high performance. And Lance here is hi, Lance Williams. He's my high performance director. He's awesome. And so we really kind of focus on, what resources and who and how will be the most beneficial to the athletes. For example, rowing is in our portfolio in our teams that we work with, but they're mostly on the East Coast. So I contracted a sports psychologist out in Princeton, New Jersey, because I thought, it'd be better for the athletes to have somebody more in person, and I focus more on the California sports. So I love the sports I work with. I really, really enjoy the teams, the athletes. I have no interest in changing, so I hopefully will keep working with them.
Rick, you want to wrap it up?
Well, listen, Caroline, thank you very much. I think I've been to a lot of Olympics and covered a lot of world championships. I think it's special as a medical personnel, but it define a lot of the athletes in terms of their lives. Allison, Felix, Sydney, people that Bobby and I have touched. They're always going to be remembered for their Olympic prowess, how they did, the medals. There's such a growth factor. I mean, when I see the kids in their first Olympics and I see the kids in their second or third, and believe me, very few people get to go to 3 Olympics. That's almost unheard of. But when you see that, you see the maturity, and you see how they've changed and how it's really sculpted their lives. I think it's an amazing thing. And I think from that, we all learned that these experiences are something. It's sort of like you win the Super Bowl and everybody says that's Jerome Bettis, they won the Super Bowl. And based on that, I think you make such a big difference, Caroline, because it puts everything in perspective, and hopefully it takes the bad out of the Olympics and kind of puts the good in the Olympics. So we look forward to Paris. No COVID, I'll be there. Maybe Mike will be there with us. And
that'd be great.
Yeah,
if you
Bring
guys
a
are
couple
ever
extra suitcases with me too.
absolutely.
Lots of
And-
shopping.
There
And
you
if
go.
you guys are ever in San Diego, please let me know. I'd love to take you guys out for dinner if you guys are in San Diego.
Count on it. Dr. Caroline Rodriguez is
Thank
our
you.
guest. And for Dr. Rick Lehman, I'm Mike Claiborne. We want to tell everybody that this conversation was brought to you by Ermi. Free to move again, free to live again. And so for Dr. Rick and Dr. Caroline, I'm Mike Claiborne. Thanking you for checking us out right here on ClaibsOnline.com.